She said it out loud, what almost every player whispers behind closed doors. And once those words left Aryna Sabalenka's mouth, the entire tennis world froze for a second. The number one player on the planet just called the tennis season insane. And she didn't stop there, because she openly admitted she's ready to skip tournaments, risk fines, and bend the rules if that's what it takes to protect her body and her career. That is not just a complaint, that is a warning shot. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this moment could quietly change how the women's tour is played for years to come. Because this isn't happening in the middle of a slump, or after a disappointing loss, or during a stretch of poor form. This is Aryna Sabalenka speaking as the reigning world number one, fresh off a dominant win in Brisbane, coming off one of the most consistent seasons of her career, and staring down another Australian Open where history, pressure, and expectation are waiting for her again. And that makes everything she just said far more powerful. Sabalenka's 6-3 victory over Sorana Cirstea in Brisbane looked routine on the scoreboard, but it was anything but meaningless. This was her first real statement of the new season, a controlled, aggressive performance that reminded everyone why she sits at the top of the rankings. Heavy ground strokes, clean serving, and that unmistakable intensity that defines her game. But when she walked off court, it wasn't her forehand that made headlines. It was her honesty. Asked about managing her schedule like Serena Williams once did, Sabalenka didn't dodge the question or offer a polished media answer. She went straight to the heart of the problem. She said the season is definitely insane. She said it's not good for the players. She pointed directly at the growing list of injuries across the tour. And then she revealed the quiet pressure behind the scenes, the tricky rules, the mandatory events, the points penalties, and the fines that come when players don't comply. This is where the story gets uncomfortable, because Sabalenka wasn't talking in theory. She was talking from experience. She admitted that last season, even when her results looked consistent on paper, she was sometimes playing tournaments completely sick. She was exhausted. She was overplayed. And yet she still had to show up, because the system demands it. Think about that for a moment. The world number one, winning matches, lifting trophies, making finals, all while pushing her body past its limits just to keep up with a schedule that never really stops. This isn't just about fatigue. This is about the long-term health of the players who are selling out stadiums and driving the sport forward. And here's the twist. Despite all of that, Sabalenka isn't backing away from competition. In fact, she's leaning into it, selectively. She made it clear that she loves high-quality battles. She wants strong draws. She wants pressure-packed matches, especially heading into a Grand Slam. What she doesn't want is meaningless overload. That's why Brisbane matters so much in this story. Sabalenka said that having so many top players in the draw makes it the perfect preparation for the Australian Open. Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Because it forces her to fight, to battle, to sharpen her mental edge. That's the difference she's drawing. Quality over quantity. Purpose over obligation. And waiting for her next is a familiar name with unfinished business attached. Madison Keys. Almost 1 year ago, Keys shattered Sabalenka's dream of an Australian Open three-peat by beating her in the final. That match wasn't just a loss. It was a turning point. It reminded Sabalenka that dominance is fragile, that hunger exists on both sides of the net, and that no title is guaranteed. Now, they're set to meet again in Brisbane, and the context couldn't be richer. Keys arrives in Brisbane with her own story of survival and resilience. Against Diana Schneider, she played nearly 3 hours of tennis, fought through 3 tiebreakers, took a medical timeout to have her upper left leg taped, and still found a way to win. She came back from a set and a breakdown. She missed match points. She endured a third set that lasted 69 minutes. And at the end of it all, she smiled and said it was good to start the year with a little bit of drama. That's Madison Keys in a sentence. This match was about more than just advancing to the quarterfinals. For Keys, it was about time on court. After a first-round exit at the US Open, she had played only 2 matches before Brisbane. She needed rhythm. She needed confidence. She needed to feel the stress of competition again. And she got all of it in one night. Her winning streak in Australia, which includes titles in Adelaide and at Melbourne Park, is quietly becoming one of the most underrated storylines in women's tennis. Australia brings out something special in Keys, and now she's staring across the net at the very player she dethroned last year. But here's where Sabalenka reframes the narrative. She says this isn't about revenge. She says this is about improvement, about aggressive tennis, about great battles, about pushing herself mentally and physically in the right way. That mindset is telling. It suggests a player who has matured, who understands that chasing emotional payback can be distracting, and that the real goal is long-term excellence. Still, don't be fooled. Competitive fire doesn't disappear. It just gets smarter. Sabalenka ended last season with a runner-up finish at the WTA Finals in November. She played 16 tournaments. She went 63-12. She even capped the year by stepping into a battle of the sexes match against Nick Kyrgios, showing her willingness to test herself beyond the traditional boundaries of the tour. This is not a player afraid of challenge. This is a player tired of unnecessary strain. And that's what makes her comments so important. When the number one player says she's willing to skip events, accept fines, and manage her schedule her own way, it sends a message to everyone below her in the rankings. If she feels this pressure, what about players ranked 20, 50, or 100? Players who need points to survive, who can't afford to skip events, who are one injury away from disappearing from the tour entirely. The rules Sabalenka mentioned aren't widely understood by fans. Mandatory events, minimum participation in certain tournament levels, and penalties for falling short all create a system that rewards endurance as much as excellence. Serena Williams navigated a different era, one where her stature allowed for more flexibility. Sabalenka is pointing out that those doors are not as open anymore, and yet she's still pushing back. She said this season they'll try to manage things better. That's a simple sentence, but it carries weight. It suggests conversations with her team, strategic planning, and perhaps selective rebellion. Because protecting your body in modern tennis often means swimming against the current. As fans, we love seeing the stars play week after week. We crave matchups. We want content. But the cost of that constant availability is becoming clearer with every injury update, every mid-season withdrawal, every burned-out performance at a major. Sabalenka's comments aren't a complaint. They're a diagnosis. And the timing couldn't be more interesting. With the Australian Open starting on January 18th, the pressure is already building. Brisbane is a proving ground. The quarterfinal against Keys is a measuring stick. And beyond that, a potential semifinal against Elena Rybakina or Karolina Muchova looms. That's a brutal path, filled with power, precision, and relentless shot-making. Rybakina, with her calm demeanor and devastating serve, represents one of the toughest matchups on tour. Muchova brings variety, creativity, and tactical brilliance. There are no easy matches here, and Sabalenka wouldn't want it any other way, because this is what she means when she talks about quality matches. These are the battles that prepare you for a Grand Slam. These are the fights that sharpen your instincts. These are the moments that make skipping a lesser event worth the criticism. What we're witnessing is a shift in how top players are thinking about their careers, not just season by season, but year by year, legacy by legacy. Sabalenka isn't slowing down. She's choosing her battles, and that choice may define the next phase of women's tennis. If more top players follow her lead, the tour may be forced to listen. Schedules may be reconsidered, rules may be adjusted, or the tension between players and organizers may grow even sharper. Either way, the conversation has started. So as Sabalenka steps onto the court against Madison Keys, understand that you're not just watching a quarterfinal. You're watching two elite athletes navigating a system that demands everything from them. One, fighting for rhythm and momentum. The other, fighting for longevity and control. And that raises a question that goes beyond this match, beyond Brisbane, beyond even the Australian Open. If the number one player in the world is calling the schedule insane, what does that say about the future of the sport? That's what I want to know from you. Should top players be allowed to skip more tournaments without penalties? Or is the grind part of what makes champions great? Let me know your thoughts, because this debate is only getting started.